On a quiet Sunday morning in Garland, Texas, a 76-year-old grandmother walked into her job at a small convenience store, and within minutes, she was fighting for her life in a way no one deserves. The security cameras inside captured everything, every second of terror, every frame that prosecutors would later call one of the most horrifying pieces of footage ever played in a Dallas courtroom. But what the cameras didn't show was why it happened. The man responsible, 36-year-old Matthew Lee Johnson, didn't run, didn't hide, and didn't deny what he did. But his story didn't start on that day, and it didn't end there either. 13 years later, on the very same date, May 20, he would lay strapped to a gurney inside the Huntsville execution chamber. And the final words he spoke left the victim's family stunned. This is the story of a brutal crime, a broken life, a grieving family, and an ending that came full circle in the most haunting way imaginable. Let's begin. It was just after sunrise when Nancy Judith Harris, known to her granddaughters as Nene, opened the Fina Whip-In convenience store where she worked part-time. She'd been doing this for years. She loved chatting with customers, staying busy, and feeling useful. Nothing felt unusual. But at 7:30 a.m., the front door opened, and a man walked in holding a lighter and a plastic bottle. He wasn't there to buy anything. Within seconds, he walked behind the counter, a place no customer should ever be. And before Nancy could even react, he tilted the bottle forward and began pouring lighter fluid over her head. She froze. He demanded money. Even with chemicals running down her face and shirt, Nancy tried to stay calm. She opened the register. She did everything he asked, hoping obedience would save her life. It didn't. As soon as the drawer popped open, Matthew grabbed the bills, grabbed coins, grabbed 2 cigarette lighters, 2 packs of cigarettes, and then he did something prosecutors later described as pure evil. He flicked the lighter. In an instant, Nancy burst into flames. Her arms, her chest, her neck, her hair, her entire body was engulfed. With her skin burning, she stumbled toward the sink behind the counter, trying to extinguish herself. The flames dimmed, but only for a moment. Her shirt, still soaked in lighter fluid, ignited again. Meanwhile, Matthew calmly walked out of the store, grabbed a handful of candy on the way out, and vanished from camera view. Nancy finally made it outside, screaming in agony, her skin blistered and falling away. A man across the street sprinted over with a fire extinguisher and blasted the remaining flames. When first responders arrived, they found her barely conscious, drenched in water, skin peeling, gasping for air. She was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital's burn unit, with burns covering most of her body. Before being sedated, she whispered a description of her attacker. Heavy-set, short hair, black male, chubby face. Those were the last coherent words she ever spoke. While Nancy fought for her life, officers were already canvassing the area, and witnesses kept saying the same thing. There's a man wandering around trying to go into people's yards. Matches the description. It didn't take long. About an hour after the attack, officers spotted Matthew walking through a nearby neighborhood. When they approached, he ran. The chase was short. He was tackled to the ground. In his pockets, cash from the store, a cigarette lighter, 2 packs of cigarettes, Nancy's ring. Every piece of evidence connected him directly to the crime. Hours later, the surveillance footage was pulled. Detectives sat silently as they watched the entire attack unfold on screen. It was undeniable. And 5 days later, Nancy Harris, The grandmother who loved Friday Nini days with her granddaughters died from her burns. Her death upgraded the charges to capital murder. To understand how a robbery turned into one of Texas's most brutal murders, you have to look at the man behind it. Matthew Johnson was born September 17, 1975, in Dallas County. His childhood wasn't just difficult, it was chaotic, unstable, and, according to family, deeply traumatic. He was raised mostly by brothers and cousins. There was little structure, little supervision, and no real emotional support. By age 7, he was already smoking marijuana. By 15, he had been arrested for car theft. His record grew through the years. 1994, arrested for violently resisting officers, even biting them. 2004, committed a robbery, sentenced to 5 years. 2009, released. 2011, arrested again for theft from a former employer. By his mid-30s, his life was defined by addiction, crime, and unpredictability. Yet at the same time, part of him tried to change. He had married. He had 3 daughters who looked up to him. During the trial, his family testified that he was trying, genuinely trying to break free from addiction. But addiction had settled into his life decades earlier. An addiction expert later testified he was almost certainly intoxicated during the attack. But even if that was true, no one could erase what happened on that surveillance video.
On October 28, 2013, Matthew Johnson walked into a Dallas County courtroom for the biggest trial of his life. The prosecution sought the death penalty. They didn't need to exaggerate anything. They simply played the security footage, minute by minute, second by second, and let the jurors see everything. Matthew pouring lighter fluid on a grandmother, she obeying him, he igniting her anyway, her running in flames, his calm walk out of the store as she burned alive. When the footage played, the courtroom went silent. Some jurors covered their mouths, a few cried. In the punishment phase, Matthew took the stand. He said, "I never meant to set her on fire. I only wanted to scare her." He apologized. He talked about his trauma, his addiction, his daughters, his wife, his childhood, his regrets. He begged the jury to spare his life so he could live long enough to see his daughters grow up. But the prosecution argued something else, something harsh, but supported by his entire record. He is a danger to society. He always has been, he always will be. Then came the hardest part of the trial, the victim impact statements. Nancy's children and grandchildren walked to the stand with trembling voices and shattered hearts. One son said, "I will be there at your execution." Another told him, "I hope my mother's screams haunt you." Her granddaughters said he wasn't truly sorry and never would be. On October 30th, the jury found him guilty. On November 8th, they delivered the punishment, death. Matthew didn't react. He didn't cry. He didn't protest. According to his attorney, he expected it. After sentencing, the appeals began, and each one ended the same way. 2015, Texas Court of Criminal Appeals denies. 2016, U.S. Supreme Court refuses to review. 2019, state habeas denied. 2022, federal habeas denied. 2023, Fifth Circuit denies. 2024, U.S. Supreme Court declines again. Final denial. Every legal door closed, and Matthew knew it. In January 2025, a Dallas County judge signed the death warrant. Execution date, May 20th, 2025. The 13th anniversary of the crime. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Matthew chose not to fight it. No emergency appeals, no last-minute filings, no attempts to delay. On May 16th, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles denied his clemency request. Nothing stood between him and the Huntsville death chamber. May 20th, 2025. The same day, same month, same hour, he attacked Nancy Harris 13 years earlier. At the Huntsville unit, Matthew was brought into the execution chamber. Witnesses included members of Nancy Harris's family, the same family who once said they hoped her screams would haunt him. At 6:53 p.m., a doctor would pronounce him dead. But before the chemicals flowed, he was asked, "You may make a final statement." Matthew turned his head, looked directly at the Harris family, and said, "As I look at each one of you, I can see her on that day. I ask for your forgiveness. I never meant to hurt her." For a moment, the room was silent. Then the drugs entered the IV line. Within minutes, he was gone. Nancy Harris spent her last conscious moments fighting flames and pain most of us can't imagine. Matthew Johnson spent his last conscious moments staring at the family of the woman he killed. The family he could never repair. 2 lives destroyed, 2 families shattered, and a story that forces one haunting question. Was this justice, or simply the only ending a tragedy like this could ever have?